We are going to discuss Public Safety, Public Act 345, millage renewal, as well as the Headlee override millage renewal for public safety, and that's the 1 mil renewal. So, why are the renewal of both millages important? Although property values are rising, the state limits the amount of revenue growth realized by the city. So when we went through the devastation from the Great Recession, our taxable values were just decimated. In fact, we lost almost 40% of our taxable values. Taxable values and the tax millages against those is how we derive the vast majority of our source of revenue. So if you take away 40% of our main source of revenue, you can imagine, I always say this, but if we were in private business, we'd be out of business. We don't have the option to be out of business. We're a public entity. We're the thing that ties all of us together. The chart, I don't know if you can see that very well, but 1 mil in 2008 before the crash was worth about $728,000. And when I say 1 mil, I don't want to confuse anyone. 1 mil is a fandangled government term for how we measure against taxable value. 1 mil was worth about $728,000 in 2008. Today, 1 mil is about $479,000, worth about $479,000. Dramatic difference. It's not just taxable values and property tax revenue that has been decreasing. The state of Michigan, and it's been under both Democrat and Republican governors, have been decreasing revenue sharing since 2002. In fact, Oak Park alone has received about $23 million less than we otherwise would have since 2002. And if you look at some of our budget gaps and things, this is, the numbers almost are directly coincide with each other. $23 million to us is a very big amount of money. Just to give you an aside, the city of Detroit has lost over $1 billion in state revenue sharing that they otherwise would have received from the state of Michigan during that same amount of time. So we've had to find new ways to make up these lost sources of revenue. And nothing would matter in terms of putting 345 on the tax rolls or whatever else unless we had included a cost reduction plan as well. And some of the things that we've done, in fact, this year we have a citywide hiring freeze right now. We've refinanced voter bonded debt, our street bonds from 2003 and 2005, I believe. We refinanced those for lower rates. In fact, our 2003 street bond, it was at, I think, 4.5% financing, and we refinanced it at 1.9%. So obviously the savings on interest is a direct savings passed on to the voters because that debt service is debt serviced by property tax revenue. We have eliminated pensions to new general city employees. Obviously, defined benefit plan employees, as they're called, for those with pensions are more expensive to the city than those who have a defined contribution plan. In the private sector, that's called a 401k. We've eliminated retiree health care to all new employees. We've reduced our health care cost. Right after the crash, we were still what's called fully funded healthcare system, and this is for active employees. We've now gone to a self-funded or pay-as-you-go healthcare system, and we're taking risk there because we're saying that we are going to pay our healthcare costs as they happen. And so one year they could spike, depending on what's going on with our employee ranks, and the next year they could plummet. Simultaneously, we've instituted a wellness program that I have the utmost respect for because I actually believe it's working and saving us money and keeping those costs down. We've received so many sponsorships and grants and financial support for city programs. We were just talking about this morning, the parade, I think, is almost entirely privately financed, so we don't pay for that out of pocket. The public safety ice cream truck is, I believe, 100% privately financed. And many, many other things. Our facade improvement program, Director Cameroni is here who administrates that. That is 100% privately financed. We've also cut general operating costs by 5% in each of our departments. When the department heads came in and presented their budgets to me, I said, listen, you need to go back and find these savings, and they did that. The current budget, which just kicked in on July 1st, is reflective of that. By the way, I should also mention that part of our strategy back in 2012, which we are now in full force in, was to create a economic development department because we knew that you could find all the cuts in the world, but you also needed to grow the pie. So we're trying to do that. You're noticing that we're adding new housing projects and new commercial projects throughout the city. We have, projects that we otherwise never would have thought of getting finally starting to look at us. One of the reasons for that is one of the economic development tools that the voters allowed us to have is a ability to go out and restaurants can have liquor licenses. And we think that's a pretty strong economic development attraction, business attraction tool, and it appears to be working. Not as fast as we would like, but it appears to be working. We are partnering with neighboring communities to cut costs and realize efficiencies. I could go on and on and on about the interlocal agreements that we have in place that we share with Ferndale or Hazel Park or Berkeley or Huntington Woods and so forth to help save dollars on common programs. We also, it shouldn't go without mentioning, but we also built the building we're sitting in right now. We opened this back in the fall of 2013. And when we opened this building, and by the way, when I came in to be the city manager in the summer of 2012, the question was, could we possibly build this building? Because we hadn't started construction on this yet. And my response is, well, I hope so. And so it turns out when we opened it a year plus later, we were at that point about $1 million under our budget. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of our staff. Kevin Yee led that staff. I don't know of too many public projects that are that much under budget and on time and delivered the way they have been. I think this whole complex is beautiful. So what is the renewal of a millage to fund the public safety retirement system pursuant to Act 345 of 1937? It's a lot of mumbo jumbo. I want to stress this is a millage renewal, not a tax increase. So by renewing this, you're not increasing your taxes. This is status quo, as a matter of fact. We're asking for the voters to consider a renewal that would not exceed 7 mills for a period of 7 years, just like it is now. We're almost at the expiration of this. That means $7 per 1,000 of taxable value. So on your tax bills, you'll notice your taxable value, and per 1,000 of that, it's $7. So do the math. And it'll be very similar to what you're paying now because, again, it's not a tax increase. It's a renewal, straight renewal. In 2012, due to harsh budget constraints, the city was forced to lay off 15 public safety officers, a total of 32 city employees, 15 of which were public safety officers. The director will talk about how they're doing more with less in that department here in a moment. But in the time since 2012, and by the way, this tax kicked in 2013, in that time frame, we have been able to go and responsibly bring back 8 of those 15 positions that were eliminated at that time. It would have been irresponsible to say, let's bring all 15 back here immediately, because what if we hadn't had the ability to pay them? Then we had to go back and lay them off all over again. So we've been very responsible about how we've brought these 8 officers back, and we intend to keep them with the voters' support, obviously. If we don't get the renewal, then this will expire, and it'll expire in the tax bill, the summer tax bill, next year. So 2020 in the summer tax bill would be the first year we'd go without it. We're actually taking this earlier than we need to ensure that voters have a full understanding of what it is. And so I probably don't even need to say it, but if it doesn't renew, then we have a huge chunk of the city's operating budget that we need to cut out. And that means, I'm just going to say it straight up, that means cutting programs. Probably some departments would be eliminated. No doubt we'd have to look at the possibility of losing officers and so forth, because it's that dire to the city's survival. And then we have the other renewal request, which is a 1 mil partial Headlee override renewal, straight renewal. This is not a tax increase, just like I said about 345. This one, too, is not an increase. And actually, taxes for this one, because of the Headlee rollback, will actually be less than they were the year before. So, just like I mentioned, $7 per $1,000 in taxable value for 345. This one's about 98 cents per $1,000 in taxable value. And here, too, this is another one where this is absolutely critical to the public safety department's operations. And it funds, a whole multitude of things, HD cameras and vehicles, bulletproof vests, all of the things that you literally have to function effectively as a public safety department. Our department, in my opinion, doesn't have everything they need even where we are today. It'd be great to have some more high-tech things, but we're moving towards that. This allows us not only to pursue some of those additional things that make our department so great, but also just to maintain and just stabilize. And so what does it mean for you? Stress again, voting yes does not increase your taxes. Voting yes means you're willing to renew these, and that is not a tax increase from where you are today. It's a straight renewal. I mentioned the decrease due to the millage rollbacks. I thought it was interesting that before the crash of 2008, the average Oak Park homeowner actually paid more in taxes than they do today with these additional mills, which I thought was shocking. If you look at this chart, the average tax bill in the 2008 fiscal year was about $2,300, and in the 18-19 fiscal year, it's about $1,800. So I found that very, very interesting. With more mills, you're actually paying less because taxable values fell so much in the crash. So we get this question a lot. Our property market values, not to be confused with taxable values, are increasing. In fact, our market values in the city are getting back to almost where they were prior to the crash. If everything remained where it was and we were recovering about the rate of inflation on these taxable values from now until 2034, at 2034 we're projecting we would be back to the same level we were in 2008 before the crash. That's what the state legislature, those are the tools that they've given us to operate. So, in essence, the state legislature has said, just hang on until 2034 and all will be well. And, you know, the Michigan Municipal League, the league is the municipal entity that ties us all together and serves as a spokesperson for municipalities just like ours. Tony Mangini is their deputy executive director and chief operating officer. And his comment is, it's a horribly designed system. And I would concur with that. It is a horribly designed system meant to, in my opinion, punish cities, unfortunately. Thank you so much for your attendance. Staff, thank you. Everybody, director, thank you.